Hi comic book fans, and welcome to another suddenlycomics.com video. So today I thought I'd start a new series which I'm going to call What's on My Shelf, in which I'm going to talk about the comics that I've got on my shelf. So I thought What's on My Shelf might be a good title. And what I've put on my shelf is what I think are some interesting comics. Right, I'm going to start off by one that's not in the display there, but which I've got next to me. So I recently picked up a whole load of comics from a guy who was selling his stock from a closed down local comic book store. Paid about 50p a comic, and I got a big run of Wonder Woman. So one of the Wonder Womans that I found in there is quite interesting. So I actually got two copies of this at 50 pence each. It's quite a nice cover. And it's in pretty good condition. And this dates from November 1982. Now, at the top of it, it says, I don't know if you can see that, but it says bonus free insert Masters of the Universe. So, and indeed, inside this comic, we have got a full mini sort of story of Masters of the Universe. And with Superman. So we've got He-Man, Skeletor, Superman. There we go, Skeletor. So that's great. So now I was thinking to myself, is this the first appearance of Masters of the Universe in comics? Well, I knew it wasn't, because one of the things that they used to do with the Masters of the Universe figures is they produced these little mini comics. I've now got a couple of these. Now, the place I go to get my comics actually sells figures. And so they've got a whole bunch of these Masters of the Universe little comics that they sell for about £4 each. I already picked up the Grislaw one because that is the first artwork of Bruce Timm. So I will pick these up occasionally. They're quite nice. And they are the sort of first, Masters of the Universe in comics. So this one here is, and I think this was in a number of DC comics. This preview was in a number of DC comics that came out in November 1982. So this is probably the first equal appearance of Masters of the Universe in DC comics. So that's the first interesting thing on my shelf. Right, I'm next going to talk about this one. There's a couple actually here. There's one behind it. Right. Before I start talking about this, just a bit of a recap for you about the history behind Marvelman. And Miracleman. So Fawcett Comics used to produce Captain Marvel. They did that very successfully for about 12 or 13 years, and then there was a long-running lawsuit between National Comics and Fawcett Comics because they said that Captain Marvel was too similar to Superman. National won and Fawcett closed down, which was a bit of a blow for a comic company in the UK called L. Miller and Son, because L. Miller and Son had been reproducing the Fawcett comics in the UK. So when the ban, and it was very successful for them. So when the ban came, they obviously had no more material to reproduce. So they hired a guy. They got a guy called Mick Anglo to do them a version of Captain Marvel who they called Marvelman. So Mick Anglo wrote Marvelman for L. Miller and Son for quite, and it was a weekly comic. So there were quite a lot of them. I think it ran for 12 or 13 years weekly. So, and he also did a young Marvelman and a Marvelman Junior. Young Marvelman and Kid Marvelman as well. Now, it was this Mick Anglo's Marvelman that was revived and then written by Alan Moore for Warrior Magazine. When Warrior Magazine closed, then the rights, then the Eclipse Comics got the right to Marvelman. They renamed him Miracleman. Okay, you followed all that. So I've got a few interesting things here. First is this fantastic book from year 2000, and this reprints a load of the UK Marvelman comics, sort of organised by Mick Anglo. It also has in it a great. It also has a whole gallery of the covers, and it has an interview in it between Mick Anglo and Joe Quesada. And this was right at the end of Mick Anglo's life. I think he died a couple of years later. Right, so first item here on my shelf is this great book that I just got recently. Really nice. It's in minty condition. It was in its cellophane wrapper when I got it, and I think it cost me £20. Yeah, 20 quid. But really, really nice. Now the two comics here are very interesting. So this one is just right at the end. This is the last Captain Marvel Junior by L. Miller and Son, and you can tell it's the last one because at the bottom it says Captain Marvel Junior goes back in time, but it also says the young Marvelman. So this is the copy where basically they give a message out to their viewers saying, or their readers, sorry, saying this is the last Captain Marvel Junior. Next week it's going to be young Marvelman. Okay, so pretty interesting comic there, and it's in really, really good condition for a comic from about 1954 or something like that. Right, now the next one is a real comic oddity. So Mick Anglo was quite entrepreneurial, and I think sometime in the late 50s, early 60s, he was approached by a Spanish publisher to whether he would do a comic for them, which he did. It was called Super Hombre, and he did about 50 or 60 issues of Super Hombre, obviously in Spanish for the Spanish market. And it was a sort of Super Hombre obviously means Superman. What then happened was that after the Spanish run had occurred, Thorpe and Porter must have approached Mick Anglo and said, "Can we have a UK version of Super Hombre? We'd like to issue it." So here we have, but of course they couldn't bring it back into the UK and call it Super Hombre, nor could they call it Superman. So what did they call it? They called it Miracleman. So, and this is the first issue of Miracleman from Thorpe and Porter, which is a reprint of Super Hombre that was produced in Spain. Now, why this is interesting, of course, is that this is the first Miracleman comic. Yeah, and not the one from Eclipse. And to make matters more interesting, of course, it's Mick Anglo who created Marvelman. Right, I'm going to leave that because it's all getting very confusing, but I think this is a really, really interesting historical comic. Right, what else have I got on my shelves? Right, something a bit more modern. I just picked this up recently. I thought I'd share it because I do think this is a good spec. It's a comic called Spider-Women, issue 1, and we have got Gwenpool. We've got Spider-Gwen, Silk, and Spider-Woman all in the same comic. Now, with Multiverse coming up, Spider-Gwen is getting pretty hot. Spider-Gwen 1 is getting hot. I think this is a nice spec pick. So there you go. That's a spec comic on my shelf. Right, what have I got behind me? So I've got a couple of comics up there. I'm just going to talk about them both. Right, so for those of you who are not aware, this is Image Comics 30th anniversary year. Yeah, so they started out in 1992. Now, in 1992, I was actually quite active collecting comics. So I have got a whole bunch of Image comics from their first year of production, including Spawn 1 and all the rest of them. So, but what was the first Image comic? I think the first Image comic was actually Rob Liefeld's Youngblood #1. I found that in my collection when I was going through my comics today, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting comic, especially since it is the 30th anniversary of Image Comics. Right, the last comic on my shelf actually arrived in the post today. This is a beautiful looking book. This was a cover buy for me. I saw it on one of the shows that I watch, Bronze and Modern Gods, and they had this as one of their undervalued comics of the week, and I agree with them. This is a beautiful Jack Kirby cover. Look at this. Look at that fabulous Jack Kirby cover. This is a comic called Tales of Asgard #1. It's got all the various Asgardian gods on here. We've got Loki, we've got Odin, a whole bunch of others. But of course, dominating, we have got the mighty Thor. Right, and this was not an expensive comic. I think I paid about £25 for this. It's in pretty decent. I think it's probably a 6.5 or a 7. And I've put it on my shelf to share with you today. Okay, that's it. Those are the comics on my shelf. They'll stay there for a few more days. Hope you've enjoyed this new little series from me on my shelf. Enough said.